What's good, family? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, the host of Black and Published podcast, and the author of the novel, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. This historical fiction novel is about the secrets kept between mothers and daughters over the course of 7 generations, and is told backwards in time from 1995 to 1860. The Seven Daughters of Dupree was published January 27, 2026, and is available everywhere books are sold. So if you can, please consider getting a copy of The Seven Daughters of Dupree today.
It was one of the greatest lessons I could learn, because it's just like, if you're not seen, if you're not doing the thing that you love, if you're not pursuing your passion, which was something that she was doing up until her last breath, then what's the point?
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published on the Mahogany Books Podcast Network, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Happy early Valentine's Day. Today's guest is no stranger to romance. Ebony LaDelle is an author and editor of the YA romance collection You've Got a Place Here Too, an anthology of Black love stories set at HBCUs. The collection stems in part from Ebony's own ambivalence to love early in life.
When I was younger, I was very much pessimistic about romance. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was actually the opposite. It was like protection. This stuff ain't happening in real life. I didn't feel like, again, in the literature that I was reading in particular, it didn't feel like I was getting anything like that.
Providing a gathering place for 11 authors to share stories of all representations of love within the HBCU ecosystem is part of Ebony's own personal publishing intervention. Why she says it's necessary to give teens the tools we all need to navigate healthy love relationships. Plus, what a platonic soulmate taught her about romantic love. And how the death of Ebony's best friend propelled her into her purpose. That and more is next, when Black and Published continues. When did you know that you were a writer?
I knew I was a writer probably from the age of 7. And the reason why even if I don't want to admit it, the reason why I know it is because I literally have documentation of me speaking in my truth. And so one of the things that I found a few years ago was this little pamphlet that we had to make for elementary school. And we all created little stories. And one of the stories I created, or a short prose poem, I guess it could be, it was entitled The Garden of Eden. And then my little bio said that I wanted to one day publish my works. So I knew then. And one of the things that I would do is I would create little books, take paper, staple it together, create a book, write a story, give it to my parents. So I definitely knew then. I just spent, I would say, my teen years until young adulthood trying to convince myself I was no longer a writer.
Say what now? Explain. What do you mean? Why were you trying to convince yourself that you were not a thing that you knew you were at 7?
Because I think, teenage years are tough. And sometimes if you're reading other people's work, especially me, I was very shy, I was very timid. I didn't like to really showcase my talents. I didn't like to be seen in that way. And so I think a big part of writing is being seen in some of the most intimate ways. And that freaked me out, which is why I only shared my work with certain people. And then by high school and even into college, you're starting to go to slam poetry sessions and stuff like that. And I'm like, nah, I'm not about to get on the stage and rip it like that. So I think I had this box of what being a writer could be. And then into my early 20s, I'm getting into the publishing industry. I'm seeing social media be such a big part of your writing journey. And that's another stage of I have to be seen in multiple ways that are uncomfortable for me. So yeah, it was really just trying to get over the comfort zone of not just putting my work out there, but also it being received and people in community with me talking about it, that I think was the hardest part. But once I got through that, then it became so much easier.
So how did you stop running from who you knew you were and get over the not wanting to be seen? Because I feel like the being seen part of being an author doesn't last super, super long.
Mm-mm. It was funny. Someone didn't realize that I was the person who wrote Love Radio, then saw me and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize your face. And I'm like, no, that's great. That's no, just
Greatest
remember the
compliment you can
name.
receive.
Yeah, just remember the name. That's all I care about, and just keep supporting my work. But yeah, it's I don't think it is as extreme as I thought it was gonna be. But when I was younger, there was no social, so you weren't the authors that you loved. You saw their little picture in the back of the book, and that was it. And so I'm like, oh, that's great. I could do that, you know. And then as a society changed, I'm like, oh crap, now I have to rethink what being an author looks like. But the thing that actually propelled me to do the work of like being a writer again was losing my best friend to cancer
Mm.
when I was 25. And she was very much not that person. She had no problem being seen. She was an amputee, gorgeous girl, owned it in ways that were so inspiring. And also was just one of my like sisters who was like, Ebony. She was one of the people who was like, Ebony, stop acting like this. Why are you acting like this? Like she knew me for years. So she also knew I acted like this for years. And that was like one of, I think, the beauties of sisterhood was she was always trying to get me out of that mind state. And so when she passed away, I mean, in her death, it was one of the greatest lessons I could learn because it's just if you're not seen, if you're not doing the thing that you love, if you're not pursuing your passion, which was something that she was doing up until her last breath, then what's the point? And I felt like that was the best way to honor her. All those years of her telling me to get out of my own head and do the thing that I've been meant to do. And even like moving into my purpose in different ways. I think another one of the things that was really important was me being in the publishing industry and being a marketer and all those things. But I just kept trying to silence that part of me, of the thing that I wanted to do. So in her death, I was able to sort of honor what I think was important for me to do because I actually wrote through the feelings that I had about her passing away. And that was the most therapeutic thing I could have done.
I now see like your career as the author, Ebony LaDelle, as in tribute to your friend. And that's a beautiful thing. You talked about writing through the feelings of her death and being able to journal or write through your grief. Did that show up on the page when you began working on Love Radio? Because you write in YA and you write YA romance. And so grief and romance, I know they go hand in hand, but make it make sense.
I wrote through sort of my grief of losing a platonic friendship. A platonic soulmate is what I would say the best way to describe it. And just the love that I received through her and through the friendship. And that was something that was really helpful for me in remembering like elements about her that I felt like I was forgetting after I went through that process of just remembering what writing does for me, because that's essentially what it was. Me
Mm.
writing through the grief of her not no longer being like her body not being present on this earth really showed me again what I loved about writing, all the things that I loved, being able to capture some of the memories that we had together, being able to make up some of the memories, fill in the blanks of things I couldn't remember. It showed me that, okay, Ebony, you really love this. And also like feeling lighter at the end of it. Like once I closed that particular chapter or ended that story or whatever that piece of work looks like, it helped me realize, okay, you do want to do this. And what is the thing that you want to write about? And so from there, it became, I want to write love stories. And that's how I transitioned into being a romance author. But I would say that even in my romance, like a lot of the really great reviews that I've received have talked about it's not just about romantic love, it's about love of family, it's about love of friendships. And so a lot of that I try to incorporate it on my stories. And that definitely is a way to honor a friend like her is through writing friendships and healthy friendships.
What did your intimate knowledge of your platonic soulmate teach you about what it means to love someone romantically and to
Mm.
show that on the page?
You know, I think platonic soulmates, one, there is just a love of a person without any sort of attachment, right? There is no like sexual attachment, there is no blood attachment. It is a choice. You are choosing to come into this relationship, come into this friendship, and give it your all. And so having someone who was just as committed to making sure this friendship worked as I was really important and really beautiful. Like one of the best things I think about the friendship was her reminding me, especially as authors, when you get focused on your work, you can forget what's around you, right? I've always been that way when I'm laser focused on something. And so I remember even in high school, I ran track for a few years and then I was in AP classes and I was just busy. And she would call me and be like, hey sis, I know you're busy, but don't forget about your girl. And it was just like one of those little silly things. And I'm like, you're right, girl. I'm gonna see you tomorrow. Just showing up in that way was so beautiful and so healthy. And it showed me how to communicate. It showed us both how to communicate. It taught me just showing up for one another. And I do think the beauty of Black women is the type of love that you can get from a Black woman is unlike anything else. Just being a witness to that, being able to experience that was enough to show me everything I wanted to also be for a romantic partner.
Ooh, yes. So, in showing you everything you wanted to be for a romantic partner, in writing these stories that a lot of people deem as fantasy or escapism because there are no meet cutes like this in real life, and these men don't exist, and especially not at 17. How do you see your work as dispelling those myths?
Well, one, I mean, okay, here's the thing. Particularly in YA, I am writing characters who age up a little bit in terms of how they move in life, right? And I do this intentionally because when I was young, I was reading The Fly Girls and The Coldest Winter Evers and
Same,
all those books.
same,
Obviously,
same.
it's so funny every time I say it, it's like this is a whole community. We all were doing this, right? And so those books were way too old for me, way too old, right? But also, there is the adultification of Black girls. And I think one of the first examples of seeing that conversation in YA book community was with Tiffany D. Jackson's Grown. And it's an unfortunate part of us being us, but I think it's the truth. And so, what I try to do is write through okay, if we are having these experiences regardless, if we have to grow up sooner than we would like to regardless, then what are like tips and tools that I can give so that we are not as teenage girls making mistakes so that we can have healthy relationships so that we can know what we deserve. And I use the male protagonist as a way of saying like you deserve this, you should be expecting this. You might not get every single thing that this guy is doing, but what you can do is you can give your boyfriend this book and say let's read this together and let's talk about this. I've had mothers tell me that they gave their sons Love Radio after they read it because they wanted their sons to like understand how to court a girl. And so I do think that there is something special to writing, to aging up a little bit so that they can take these lessons and apply them. And also as teenagers, every year of high school, you are transitioning in so many new and different ways. And so this could be a book that you come back to when you're in your senior year versus your sophomore year and be like, wow, like I've learned so much. I've dated a few people. This is helpful for me to figure out like how best to navigate healthy love relationships.
I love that. I'm going to take a tangent.
Okay.
This is something that I've thought about, and I've had this not a full length conversation, so we're going to see where this goes.
Okay.
So I assume we're about the same ages. I was reading Fly Girl around
Mm-hmm.
11, 10, 11, 12,
Mm-hmm.
around there, all the
Mm-hmm.
things. And I said to someone that I interviewed the author and Columbia professor, Dr. Farah Jasmine Griffin,
Mm-hmm.
for her memoir, Read Until You Understand. And in that book, she talks about how when she was 9 with her father, she went to the bookstore, she saw Sula
Mm-hmm.
and got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a disservice that has been done to Black readers of our generation. This is a big difference to go to the bookstore at 9 and see Sula and to go to the bookstore at 10 and see Fly Girl, right? That's just two different levels and calibers of writing. And so then as we have gotten older, we have had to go back and dig into the crates of the classics and rediscover the Morrisons and the Walkers and the Hurstons and the Hooks and all the things. Whereas that was the norm when Morrison was debuting with a novel in the 80s or whatever. From working in publishing, do you feel a similar way of how publishing changes the trends or follows the trends, especially with like urban fiction getting really big at that time period, that it's done a disservice to a certain population of readers, or no?
I definitely think it depends on the time. I remember when I first got into publishing, urban fiction was still like on and popping, right? And it was one of my frustrations, not so much that we had urban fiction, it was more like I feel like we only have urban fiction. And that was a conversation on the inside where publishing felt like, well, these are the only types of books that Black people want to read. And so I think from the moment that I started until now, we're getting to a place where publishing has realized like that is not the case, that Black people are not a monolith. And so they want different types of stories. And also, I think that in terms of urban fiction, like this was all that was available to us. So this is what we were reading. Imagine if we were teenagers and we had Fly Girl and Love Radio. That is sort of what I was thinking about because I remember reading Fly Girl and being interested and invested in the story. And I'm like, I don't act like this girl at all. Like, what about the shy girls who like to curl up with a book, but also we like to do fun things? It's just we not trying to do all this, you know? Like, where is that book for me? And I think for me, that book was The Skin I'm In. That was the book that I read that I felt like I saw myself in a way that felt healthy to me. But yeah, I think that really is what it is. Publishers and publishing is always going off of trends. The trends this go around over the course of the next year are going to be very interesting considering the climate that we're in. And so we're going to find out who's really standing up for us and who's falling in line, right? But I hope that we are still standing on the right side of history and that we will still continue to publish and promote the works of Black authors.
Do you see what you're writing in the genre that you're writing in as an intervention that you wish you would have had as a young reader?
Absolutely. When I was younger, I was very much like pessimistic about love, romance. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was actually the opposite. It was like protection. Like, this stuff ain't happening in real life. You know, like I love those movies. And anytime I saw even like a couple that like seemed like they were so in love and they were so connected, and I'm like, oh, that person is for that person. That's so beautiful. I want that version of for myself. But I didn't feel like, again, in the literature that I was reading in particular, it didn't feel like I was getting anything like that. And so if you don't have an example and you are not seeing it, you just don't think it's possible. But I do think if I had books like that, it would have given me a sense of like, okay, Ebony, it is possible. Maybe it's not possible right now, and that's okay. Maybe the book would have helped me realize, okay, your standards aren't too high. They're actually in line with what you need in terms of what a guide needs to be for you. Those are the things I think would have been helpful in reading that. And also, I probably would have been passing the book along to someone I was dating, like, listen, I need you to read this and let's talk about it. Like, what you bringing to the table, sir? Like, let's talk about that. Yeah.
So then to that end, what did you think was the possibility when you began to conceive of You've Got a Place Here Too?
I always knew I wanted to write something related to Howard. I wasn't sure how it would look, and I didn't know if it was going to be something that I put into a story or if it was going to be. I knew I didn't want to have it to be a whole story, like a whole book about it, but I knew I wanted to somehow incorporate it. The thing that I also kept thinking about, though, as I was thinking about it, was like, I also just love the idea of incorporating the HBCU experience because it is literally its own ecosystem, its own place for us to be ourselves, to really be able to express ourselves in ways that it gets harder as you move into corporate America and all those things, right? And also, I was thinking about people that I knew, like when I was trying to convince my cousin to go to HBCU, I was like, oh, you should go to Howard. And he's from the South. And he's like, nah, it's too city for me. And so I'm like, okay, you're right. It is too city for you. So what would it look like if you saw a representation of an HBCU in the South and you're like, okay, this is more my speed. And so that really got my gears turning of, okay, what can I do to like showcase multiple HBCUs and have a love story angle? And it immediately turned into like, oh, an anthology, a collection of love stories at HBCUs. That sounds great.
What was the process of selling that concept and getting all the authors together to write the stories and submit for them?
First, it was actually coming up with who would be the contributors for the stories. And that process was a hodgepodge of so many random things. One, I wanted to make sure that I was featuring HBCUs from different places. And so that was really important to me. And some HBCUs, there might be more alum who are writers than others, right? So that becomes the difficult part. Two, I wanted to incorporate certain themes within the stories, even if the writer didn't necessarily go to HBCU. So we have, for instance, like Kai Harris's story. It's set at Fisk University. She's a Delta. And I really wanted to incorporate fraternity or sorority into this collection. It just wouldn't have felt complete. I wanted to make sure that there was queer love in this collection, right? Because I feel like queer representation, especially when we talk about it amongst HBCUs, is a touchy subject. I wanted to incorporate a HBCU that wasn't in the States. And so Nicola writes about the University of Virgin Islands. She has a Caribbean background. So there were certain elements that I really wanted to be included so that it felt like a full breadth of HBCU experience. And from there, I looked at writers who went to HBCUs, writers who could touch upon those random themes. And all the writers I had to be sure were great at writing a love story angle, because I feel like that is something that romance always gets the rep that it gets. But it's not easy, like making sure that there's the right amount of tension or the right amount of swoon or the right amount of anything. And so looking at and reading the works of the authors who are contributors was something that I felt like they were all able to tap into really well. So from there, it obviously was a longer list than the list of contributors that you see on the page, but we then reached out to them, me and my agent, and it was crazy because I had a list of backups and different stories and different regions in case this didn't work out or this didn't work out. And a lot of my first picks were just like, yes, immediately. And I'm like, wow, okay, great. And then for the ones who said no, it's like, okay, now that I know like a chunk of people what they're doing, now I have to reconfigure the story. So then it went back to, okay, if I have like 80% of the contributors, then what are the stories that are missing that I need to make sure are in here? Or what are the schools that I feel like, what regions are not being represented enough that I need to throw in here? That was how it all came together. And so I had the contributor list before we even went out on submission. And then we went out on submission, and honestly, it was a really great process because people were really excited about it. And this is something we haven't really seen before in this way. And so it was very easy to go on submission and get the book, which I'm thankful for.
How has your background in publishing helped you navigate the author side, and especially with this project,
Mm-hmm.
and getting the buy-in from your contributors and then also from the industry to continue this YA romance intervention we've got going here?
The coordination of everything, right? I definitely felt like I was back in publishing full time, like working with 11 contributors feels like, okay, these are my marketing projects. These are the books that are coming out this season, and these are the authors that I'm working with. And so I have to communicate with them different things, right? So whether it's communicating, here are the assets that we have, even like some of the posts that we've been doing, that has to be coordinated, right? And so there was that part. There was the editorial process that like there was communication with me, the authors, and the editor. And I think even with me pitching myself to the authors to work on this collection, I do think that my reputation in the industry was very helpful for me to get some of these authors. I literally was the marketer for some of these authors. And so that made it easy. Some of the authors who were on board, it really was a conversation more than anything. So like Elizabeth Acevedo, it was me being like, you know, girl, I would love for you to write something to give the bent that I know you can give because I just love her as a writer. And I remember her saying, yeah, there's an idea I have because I found out that there was a Dominican Tuskegee Airman. I'm like, yes, Tuskegee University. This is literally what I want included in the story. And so from there, it was just like, okay, let's go. You know, so that's a conversation that me and her had in person that would have never been able to come to be if it wasn't for my connections in that way. So yeah, it was really great to be able to leverage being a writer and being known for that, but also being known for my work on the inside to be able to convince some of these people to be in this anthology.
So then with that said, can you go ahead and read something from the anthology so then that we can dive into it a bit more?
Sure.
You've Got a Place Here Too, an anthology of Black love stories set at HBCUs, edited by Ebony LaDelle, is a collection of 11 short stories showcasing all aspects of Black love. From queer to cowboy, the cafe to the Caribbean, authors include Kennedy Ryan, Elizabeth Acevedo, Kiese Lehman, and Ebony herself. They mix history and pleasure with just a hint of spice for a literary collage of romance and care. Here's Ebony.
I'm going to read this part that kind of talks a little bit about the roster. I chose to curate this amazing roster of authors and edit an anthology about HBCU love stories from a place of reverence. And You've Got a Place Here Too, the stories reflect the love we have for HBCUs and reveal what makes them beautiful. And while you're watching characters, mostly, fall in love on the page, I want you to fall in love with the place, the campus, and know that if you don't feel a sense of home anywhere, this might be a good place for you too. I couldn't have imagined when I conceived of this idea that it would allow me to work with the cast of today's luminaries. Kennedy Ryan takes her to her fictional HBCU, her A Different World as I like to call it, and Brave the Skies, a continuation story from her Audible novella Coming Home. She was my top ask for obvious reasons, the most important of which was her care when writing about Black love. And let's not forget the spice she brings. It's why her work is so beloved today. It's also why I asked New York Times bestselling romance author and Xavier University alum Farah Rashan to contribute. She shows us the Mardi Gras experience in Second Line First Dance, while Florida A&M University alum Donnie Walton pens a love story between two alums in the highest of Seven Hills. It was important for me to have male POVs as well as queer love representation, a topic that for so long was buried at HBCUs. You'll discover a multi-generational journey of the exquisiteness of our people through the illustrious HBCUs featured. Best-selling and award-winning poet Elizabeth Acevedo writes a Tuskegee Airman homage in verse in A Flying Lesson, and Carla Bruce writes of love sprouting on the basement of a Lambda Student Alliance meeting. Critically acclaimed author Kaya Harris pays homage to the Fifth Jubilee singers in Whatever Gods May Be, and Carnegie medalist and MacArthur Fellow Kiese Layman offers a deeper and darker tale in The Musty. Award winner Christine Platt takes us west to Langston University with a love story that begins with a white lie. And New York Times bestselling author and YA romance queen Nicola Yoon's lovers make a difficult decision at the University of the Virgin Islands in romantic studies. While Detroit's chief storyteller Erin Foley highlights Michigan's only HBCU through A Secret Love, our romance collection is not complete without a cafe love story penned by contest winner and North Carolina A&T student Jasmine Bell. Just like HBCUs, this collection's got something for everybody.
Thank you.
Of course.
So I told you we're going here, so don't act surprised.
Okay.
You read the roster, of which you are also included.
Yeah.
Because you do have a story.
I do.
I want to know, because you pinned this beautiful story about Howard, and the story touches on some of the things that you've talked about what it means to have a love that doesn't try to hold you back or hold you down or keep you from your dreams. That's all there on the page in the story that you wrote. And so in seeing that that's like a big part of what seems to be your own personal thought process, is there something that you are fearful of that being heard aloud, or just you just not ready?
But not you come up with me like this. Because like I said earlier, it's so intimate, like putting yourself and your work out there. That's it. That's all it is. But I will say in general, it is something that is very important to me. And I do think I am really trying to show, particularly like young women, in your pursuit to go after your goals and dreams, to make sure that you are able to find someone who is in line with that. Whether or not you guys are like on the direct same path is one thing, but making sure that you have that support system is huge. And like looking for that in relationship, you know, like not settling for that in relationship.
Yeah, because homegirl in the story was like, yeah, all right, I'm about to be out to USC. I'll catch you later. Like, you got 3 jobs and all the things, and I love that for you, but I'm about to go and do this fellowship right quick, and I'll holler back.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about so many women who just like, you know, they sacrifice the things that they want most of their life for a man, and then they regret it later, right? And so what I was trying to show is that if that love is there, it'll be there. If this is supposed to be your person and this is so important to you, then you should be able to find someone who not only understands and appreciates that, but is there to support you through it. And whatever that looks like, whether that looks like you guys break up, whether it looks like you take a break, whether it looks like you try to stick it out, like that's not the point. The point is like, what happens when you say this is something very important to me? This could change the trajectory of my career, and the person that you're with does not support it. You know what I mean? What does that say about how that person is going to support you in general?
You mentioned Jasmine Bell's story, Sunset Sips, in the intro that you read,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was a contest winner and getting the story from North Carolina A&T. What was the contest like? Because I love her story. I love the little messy scene where the coworker comes from the back and starts a whole scene so that these two people can get together.
So
like,
dramatic, I know.
I love it because I was like, wait, what is happening? And I was like, oh, I like this. I love a good messy friend that's here.
Exactly. Who's got your back no matter what.
Yes.
Exactly. Like, what you need, let's go. Yeah, so the contest was for anybody who was a student in undergrad or grad school. They could submit their work to be included in the anthology. And I was essentially like looking for an opportunity for HBCUs everywhere to be included in the anthology. And Jasmine's story was just like from the start, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. And it was great because I didn't have a North Carolina A&T story as well. So it worked out perfectly. And also I didn't have a cafe love story, which was even better. So I'm really happy that she submitted her work and that it worked out. And she's just such a bright star. I can't wait to see what else she publishes.
Which story in the anthology touched you the deepest?
Oh, that's so hard. Why would you do that to me? I really love Donnie Walton's story. Oh my God, so beautiful. She touched on so many things. I like that it was like second chance. I like the sort of multi-generational aspect of it. So that one was really great. I really wanted Elizabeth to write a story in verse, and I didn't push her to do it. But when she told me, she was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go in that direction." I'm like, "Great." Like, because that's what I envisioned for her. But I said it, I was like, if you want to write it in verse, however you want to do it, that's fine. But really, I wanted to be like, "Girl, can you please write this in verse?" So she did it, and it was beautiful and everything I wanted it to be. Oh my gosh, who else? It's so hard. Kiese's story was nothing like I pitched, and I
I
love
need
that.
to read it again.
I know, I know, I know. It's one that you sit with, and I love that. And I knew that. In a sense, I knew that Kiese was gonna do whatever he wanted to do. I asked for a JSU story. I have my mom's family's from Mississippi. And so like I grew up going down there and that just being such a big part of the culture. And I knew it needed to be a person from JSU to write it the way that it needed to be written. And he said, "I'm gonna write it the way I think it needs to be written for the community." And so
And did.
and absolutely did. So I love that. I love that he brought that in. And especially now, I think it's very much a story that it's crazy how writers can really be just like in the currents of what is happening to society and what we need to hear. So yeah, I'm very thankful for that one. There are just so many good ones for different reasons, honestly. And I think because a lot of it was also me pitching like certain concepts and stories, so many of them are my favorites because that's what I wanted. Like Christine gave us a cowboy story, and I really wanted a cowboy story. And she is another person who it was just a conversation of us talking about the anthology and what I was looking to do for it. And she was just like, "Yeah, I have a cowboy type thing that I had been thinking about, but I didn't know how to use it." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I want a cowboy story." Like, and so it was great because we were basically able to combine both things that we wanted to do into the collection and just seemed like a really great fit. So I think that there are like elements of each story too that I'm just so in love with for different reasons. Like Farah is telling us about the Mardi Gras experience and explaining the history behind Mardi Gras in a way that I think is very compelling and needed to be shared. And also, I love the enemies to lovers situation there. So, yeah, it's hard to pick one, but I will say for the ones that I picked, those are like some of the reasons why I like the story.
So many of the stories rang familiar, especially if you grow up learning about the different HBCUs and your parents
Mm-hmm.
saying these are the schools that you need to look at first.
Yeah. And
Um,
also, you talking about the culture of HBCUs. If you grew up in an area that had an HBCU, that culture was ever present in the area,
yeah,
And so it shapes a lot of like, I mean,
it shapes
obviously
the
each
city
city.
where it is. It
Mm-hmm,
shapes the
mm-hmm.
culture of,
And I
tell.
believe the city shapes the HBCU as well. It's a really beautiful marriage, I would say.
Which of the stories taught you something about either the specific HBCU or HBCU culture in general that you didn't know?
I would say Farah's story was really helpful because I think it was just able to break down the history in
Mm-hmm.
ways that I feel like it's fun as you're reading the story. It's digestible. It's like through this conversation, this dialogue of a girl who's not from the city trying to tell everybody how to do things, which I love. That was my favorite part because the outsider coming in, it's like if you can't respect what we do here and you don't understand the background, the history of it, then maybe keep your trap shut. So that's one. I also would say Carla Bruce's story. So the queer representation, like I said, was important for me. And I was researching what schools stood up on the right side of history first when we talk about queer representation. And when I was doing the research, I was shocked and also not shocked to find out that Howard was one of the first. And so it became this thing of like, okay, well, we're going to have two stories that feature Howard. However, these are two different stories, and they're both showing a piece of history that I think is equally important, right? In different ways. And so being able to connect with Chai Hughes, one of the characters is like loosely based off of her because she was one of the founding members of the Lambda Alliance organization at Howard. And so that was just really beautiful to be able to hear about like how it started and some of the things that they went through and how they overcame, and how Howard was just always, the students have always just been, because they're so connected to the area around them and the government, how they've always tried to be on the right side of history and like advocating for our rights in so many different ways.
I think for me, the most surprising, and just because I didn't know, was the story that's at the University of Virgin Islands and Nicola's story, and reading that tale and really enjoying it and seeing the diaspora represented in the anthology. So I feel like you got the heavy hitters in this one. Not all of them, but you got your Howards, you got Fish, you got FAM, JSU, A&T. Is there going to be like a second anthology? Because I feel like I need a Tayari story at Spelman specifically. I don't know where she was on the contributor list.
I mean, she unfortunately couldn't. Trust me, I tried. Okay, I tried.
But I'm like, so like now that we have like volume 1, is there gonna be like volume 2? And like we get your Bennett's, your Benedict's, your Spelman, your Morehouse. Because we got to hit the AUC. Somebody give us a Morse Brown story.
I know. I love the AUC. I really wanted the AUC story, but it just didn't pan out. But listen, you never know. I will say that you never know, because that would be a lot of fun. And even when I was putting together the stories and the schools, I'm like, I know people are gonna be like, well, what about this? And it's so funny even seeing like some of the early reader comments. They're like, even though my HBCU wasn't considered LOL, I still love it. So I do think that there's more schools to be showcased. So yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so I'm gonna take the we'll see and I'm gonna keep going. What's next for you, Ebony?
What's next for me right now is working on more stories. I am in the beginning stages of figuring out some fun stories, but when you're in the beginning stages of the writing process, it can be a little hard, and you're like, dang, I'm starting this over again. Why did I choose to do this with my life? All that stuff. And then the stories come together. You like, girl, you got this. Let's go. But so like, I'm in the ideation stages and trusting myself. I know it's going to work out. And I have deadlines, so they are coming. It might be taking a second to cook, but they're coming. So yeah, I still will be writing for sure.
All right, so I want to switch to a speed round in a game before I let you go for the afternoon. What is your favorite book?
I don't like this question at all. I don't.
I can tell. Like your face was like, no, ma'am.
I have to answer this.
What's your favorite book today in this moment at this hour?
Today, at this moment, at this hour. I haven't finished it yet, but I can already tell Toni at Work it's just because I've just always admired Toni Morrison. She was an author, she was an editor. And so even from the start of my publishing career, she was someone where I'm just like, wow, she could do it all. She was one of the people that actually made me feel like, okay, like I know I'm not Toni Morrison, obviously, but like if she could do both of these things, if she could be a writer and an editor, I could be a marketer and you know what I mean, and a writer. And so being able to hear the business side of things, the side that I know very well, and like how she was able to like navigate all that, it's just really special to me. I'm nerding out over it. So it's easily becoming one of my favorites.
Who is your favorite author?
I mean, I'm just gonna go with Toni. We're gonna just do that. That's easy.
Okay, keep going. Who is your favorite poet?
I'm gonna say person that comes to mind today, very ever present considering the title of the book, I would say Nikki Giovanni. And I got to meet her once, and that was the best experience.
What do you think is the best book to movie or book to series adaptation?
I think I'm going to say To All the Boys I Loved Before, just because it's YA. I also think because Jenny Han was able to like be a part of the process, which is not always the case for authors. You could just see touches of her within the series, which I think is so important. The thing that always bugs me about these adaptations, I know Hollywood has its reasons, but when they don't allow the author in and they miss like some of the most important parts of the story, like there's a fandom for a reason. And so if you take away some of the scenes or some of the parts where readers really vibe with it, it can completely mess up the story. You're like neglecting your core audience. And so I feel like she did a really great job of making sure the parts of the books that were really important, they were featured in the adaptation.
What is your favorite rom-com or romantic movie?
It's problematic for its reasons, but Love and Basketball was my coming of age movie. So it's easily that one. And then it is not, I mean, it has romance in it. The Wood is one of my favorites too.
If money were no object, where would you go? Where would you live? And what would you do?
I would just travel the world, honestly. That's where where I go. It's just would be like, oh, Ebony's here, Ebony's here.
Everywhere is the answer.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
everywhere. And it would be nice to just be able to, I don't necessarily know if I would have a where would you live. I'd have a few different homes, and it would be nice to travel to figure out what feels right for me. That's the one thing I definitely feel like I know about myself is if I'm in a place that I feel like I do not belong, I have no problem leaving that place. So
Mhm.
I would just want to be able to find the place that I would love the most. And what would I do? I guess I would continue to write for as long as I could, if I'm being honest. And I don't know, maybe do something that is like healing and helpful with my hands in whatever way that looks like.
Name 3 things on your bucket list.
I feel very lucky that a lot of the things that I've been wanting to do, I've done it, but I think it's more professional. And so I've actually, especially over the last year, I haven't really thought of like, oh, what are 3 things that I just want to do for pleasure? So honestly, I'm happy you asked me that question because it's something I really need to think about.
We're going to table that till your next book comes out and we'll
Okay.
revisit this.
Sounds good.
What brings you joy?
Honestly, it's just simple things. Like right now, what's bringing me joy is I have not been able to spend time with family in years, like immediate family, because of work. I lived in New York. It was too expensive. I worked in publishing. They weren't paying enough. I was, like you sacrifice in other ways. So, like, I was in a long term relationship and I was traveling back and forth for that. So, there was always some reason why I couldn't be around family as much. And within the last few years of me not working full time, I've really been able to come back to be with family more, immediate family more. And that has just caused me so much joy because I'm being able to like reconnect with family again in ways that I felt like we were limited by. I have a nephew, I have a niece coming. So I'm just being able to spend time with people who are the same as me. And that's just been really beautiful and healing for me.
Who, as an author, do you most admire?
I would say all the authors that I mentioned that I worked with, I admire them greatly and deeply. Just Black women who were specifically like, that was a very important period in publishing, in YA publishing, where we were literally seeing so many different stories changing the scope of publishing, changing the scope of Black female leads in books. And so I admire like their strength in choosing to say, I'm going to write this story and I need y'all to publish this story the way I'm choosing to write this story. I admire them coming into these spaces and like making a name for themselves when that wasn't necessarily guaranteed and staying true to their voice. So I think that's something that I will always admire about writers.
And what brings you peace?
Boundaries. And I say that with all respect and love for any and everybody that I had to set up boundaries with. But when I tell you that has really, and it's just one of those things where when you pour so much into other people, and it's just at a certain point, someone can lean on you. And this was something I had to learn because there was a lot of coddling that I would do with people, right? Because it's like you pour into someone, they need more, you pour into it, it just never ended. And I really had to take a step back and be like, Ebony, like, it will never end. You know what I mean? If people could take every last bit of the energy you have, it's no shade, but they're doing it because of what they feel like they need. And so you've got to set up these boundaries so that you can have a more peaceful life because you're not going to have nothing left for you. And so once I did that, it really changed me in so many ways.
I love that for you. I love that for us.
Yeah. Like collectively, we are learning.
Yes.
We have to do it. We have to.
All right. So our game is called Rewriting the Classics. Classic is however you define it. Name one book that you wish you would have written.
It's an oldie but a goodie. It's by Guy Johnson, Standing at the Scratch Line. And it was actually a book recommended to me by someone I was dating at the time. And I love that book so much. It's like Western style, it's set in Louisiana. It's nothing I would ever write. And it was so Black. And I really loved it so much. So, yeah, that is one that I wish I could have put all those concepts together and created a story like that.
Name a book where you want to change the ending and how would you do it?
Ugh. Um, can I pass on that one?
You sure can. Name a book that you think is overrated or overtaught and why. And you can do dead people.
Okay, I'm gonna say The Scarlet Letter
So that was quick.
because it really like it like I don't know, and I'm not saying that maybe I need to reread it. I just feel like there was so much emphasis. I remember in school we had to read this book and talk about like well, what does the S represent and what is this? And it just felt like it felt very triggering in the sense of the discussion, the things that we had to talk about. And I'm like, there are so many other books that we could get into that is not this. So I don't know. Maybe I need to reread it and maybe I'll think differently from the time. I remember all the traumatic aspects of like how we were talking about it, but also I don't remember the story fully because I think I was so frustrated by like the ways we had to break the book down that I am just like, I really wish there were other things that we could have read over that.
We read the book and we watched the movie. And while I did not enjoy the book, I did enjoy the movie. So my final question for you today, when you are dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about the legacy of words and work that you left behind?
I would say, number one, the work that I did aim to do in publishing, I think that there are a lot of people in the industry who are really doing things behind the scenes that you don't always hear about it or see it, but it is important aspects of how authors are able to maintain a career. And so what that looked like for me, like that I was able to participate in this part of cultural to be one of the change makers on the inside, right? In terms of the work that I'm deeply dedicated to writing about love stories and how that particularly influences Black people, Black women, even more particularly. Like I've always wanted Black women to have their happily ever after, however that looks. And so I want people to be able to like recognize that in the stories that I was writing about Black women, that there was always a level of like care that I wanted to showcase and like a tenderness and like love that they deserve.
So does that mean we may get like an adult romance out of you at one point?
Yeah, you probably will.
Big thank you to Ebony LaDelle for being here today on Black and Published. You can follow Ebony on the socials at Ebony LaDelle on Instagram and Threads. And make sure you check out You've Got a Place Here Too, out now from Delacorte Press. You can get a copy of the anthology from Mahogany Books and get 10% off your first purchase using code BLACKPUB at checkout. That's BLKPUB. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Ebony about the beauty in rediscovering Black classics decade after decade after decade. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week when our guest will be Damon Young, author and editor of That's How They Get You, an unruly anthology of Black American humor.
I wanted this anthology just to show the limitlessness of Black virtuosity and how it being an anthology that is exclusively Black people actually makes the spectrum of possibility wider. I think that Black actually speaks to the ceilinglessness nature of this book and of the sort of places that only Black Americans can go with the humor, with the construction, with our language.
That's next week on Black and Published. I'll talk to you then. Peace.
What's going on, family? This is Derek Young
and Ramonda Young,
owners of both Mahogany Books and the Mahogany Books Podcast Network.
We really want to thank each and every one of you for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, drop us a review and rate us on whatever platform you download podcasts on.
We truly appreciate each and every one of you for supporting us and making us your go-to for Black books. And we look forward to connecting with you all sometime in the future.
Thank you again, fam. And always remember, Black books matter.